My key takeaway is you need to have an integrated approach. You need to talk with the e-com department. You need to talk with the media department. You need to talk with the SoMe team to make sure that you have this organic optimization across all of media activities. I'm Mathilde Høj, and this is SEO in 2026.
Mathilde, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
My number one tip is that search is no longer a channel, it's a behavior. So you need to adapt your entire marketing strategy to it and have a more integrated approach.
So search is a behavior. What does that actually mean?
That means that we see a lot of different things coming into play in how users are interacting with platforms. So usually we would have, when users want to find stuff, they will go onto Google and search and then go into a web page and then maybe convert or go down to a physical store. But what we're seeing now is that they are doing much more than that. They are searching across multiple platforms, visiting multiple sites before making a decision on whether or not to buy. And we have two factors that are coming into play here and is affecting the way users are behaving. So first of all, we have generative AI and machine learning changing the way the traditional engines work. So AI overviews and AI mode also coming into Europe soon, but also this behavior taking place in new environments and the platforms in those environments adapting to it as well. So as I've previously spoken on the podcast, that TikTok is doing a lot to make themselves more search engine-like. That is also affecting that users are turning to platforms like TikTok or Instagram or Reddit to search for stuff.
Okay, but because search is a behavior and it happens at different points in the user journey and there are so many different platforms involved, how do you measure the impact of search nowadays?
That is where it gets tricky because I think a lot of different companies are trying to do this in a lot of different ways. The best way to do it would simply be to give a score of each platform. So having a weighted score for what you see on TikTok and what you see in Google and in Search Console and in GA and in retail platforms as well. So if you have activities on Amazon, have that combined in a way and then scoring that. We call it a connected search score. But yeah, giving it a name, giving it a way in how important that platform is for your business. For some businesses, TikTok will be really important. For some businesses, it wouldn't be important at all. Whereas for some, Google is the most important platform. So of course, that platform have to have a bigger way than other platforms need to have.
So how do you establish which platform is best for your business? Because history isn't necessarily an obvious pattern of what is going to happen in the future. So what happened historically, looking at Google Search Console in terms of where visitors are coming from or where visitors actually go or GA4, whatever data you're looking at, doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the biggest opportunity in the future. So how do you identify the right and biggest opportunity for your business for the future?
You definitely need to know your audience and have that in-depth knowledge of who they are and what the personas you want to target are. Because we did a study in the US in the end of last year about user behavior in general, and then we replicated it in Denmark earlier this year. And what we can see in general is that users are spending much more time searching. They are visiting a lot more platforms that they used to. They are primarily using their smartphones to do it. And over 50% are finding inspiration through social media. So you definitely need to keep social media in that way of prioritizing platforms as well. And when we look at Denmark specifically, it's only 50% that would choose Google for all of their search queries. Whereas when asked, we see 15% choosing chatbots or AI to answering all of their queries and 11% choosing TikTok as the platform where they can get answers to all of their queries, regardless of it being within food, health, money, cars, products. So you need to know your audience. You need to know what platforms they're using, and then get on them, of course, and activate them both in organic but also in paid.
And what does activating them mean in practice? Just interacting on there and having that as part of the buyer journey? And if you're doing that, how do you know what stage of the buyer journey people are likely to be on when you're targeting the platform that you want to target?
Generally, we say that when it comes to social search, people are more in the top funnel part of stuff. So they are looking for inspiration, but have not yet decided on where to buy or when to buy or what to buy. When we move into the conversational part of it, so going into ChatGPT or Perplexity or using AI overviews, it's more in the mid-funnel stage. So you are more clear on what you want to buy, but you are lacking maybe specifications or alternatives or price points or stuff like that. So you're going into that chatbot and asking it, what do you think about this product? Do you have any recommendations of similar products and stuff like that? Whereas when we go down to the more traditional search engine, it is low funnel. So you're going into a website and converting or booking an appointment or finding directions to a local store that you can visit.
And you talk about traditional search engines. There are newer forms of search engines. I guess you could argue that something like ChatGPT is a search engine as well, and that it surfaces information, whether you're asking specifically for that or not. How do AI search engines impact someone's likely behavior in search moving forward? Are they likely to stay on those AI search platforms to decide what they want to do, what they want to purchase, or are they likely to maybe do some research on an AI search engine and then maybe go back to a more conventional search engine after that?
I think the more complex journey, and also it depends on what answers you're getting from the AI search engine. Because if you're getting a personalized answer, but it's not really what you wanted, if your prompt was bad or not as descriptive as it could be, then you would most likely go into a domain and see what does the company write around their products or the services. Then go back into the ChatGPT and rewriting your prompt, asking another question, and then moving back and forth. This is what I would imagine we see now. I think in the future, with AI also evolving a lot, we are going to see more people staying in ChatGPT platforms and keeping the conversation going as that technology also get more refined.
Okay, and you're obviously based in Denmark, but as you say, you've done a lot of research on what's happening in the US at the moment. What are the main differences between search in different countries at the moment, and how do you see that continuing to evolve in 2026?
In more advanced markets, if we could say that, more mature markets like the US, there is obviously a much higher adaptation to all of this new technology, also across age groups. Whereas when we go to markets like Denmark, where we are technological mature, but we're not as big as of a market, we do see that the adaptation is not as mature as it is in the US, for instance. But what we do see is very similar tendencies. So where in the US, on social media, users are using that higher or more than traditional engines, what we see in Denmark is that the usage is the same in specific audiences. So mature markets have more adaptation than not so mature markets have, and that we can take into other markets as well. So for the UK, I would say they are most likely more mature than Denmark is, because they usually get more of the new technology before Denmark does.
And can we also presume, forecast that what happens in the US is going to happen in the UK is going to happen in Denmark at some point, several months or years ahead?
In most cases, but again, that's not applicable to the UK maybe, but in other EU markets, we do have the European Commission making laws around technologies and other stuff, ethical considerations. So we might not get all of it, or we might get it in a more refined way, but we are getting all of the technologies that the US have, I would, imagine.
So you talked a lot about audiences before, about how you need to identify who your audience is and then decide upon where to interact, what platforms to embrace more based upon that. What's your process for establishing who your audience is?
Making some research. In most cases, the clients we're working on have a media agency or have an insights department where we can go down and ask them, who do you want to target and how does they look like? Also, when in general people are deciding on which media they want to activate, they also have an idea on these are the audiences we want to target. And then we can go in on search and see, okay, this is the audience, Gen Z, millennial. They usually have this behavior. So that means including TikTok, including Instagram, especially, including Reddit, but also including ChatGPT AI overviews, because they're also still using the traditional engines. They're using retail search as well. So if Amazon is available, having that into the consideration as well, how we can optimize on that.
So you've identified who your audience is, but then do you cater your content, your message for a typical user? Do you build a persona? Do you assume that there's one core buyer journey and just really focus on that? Or do you have multiple different users that you're trying to actually write content for?
You have to write content for multiple users because even though you're targeting one, your content is reaching a lot of different people. So on websites, we're used to having more evergreen content that is more down to earth, but also very factual and very pleasing for everybody really to look at. Whereas on TikTok or Instagram, you can show more the company that you are and the products that you have and tailor it a little bit more than you would in your website. You could also have some activations through digital PR that can showcase other sides of the business. So maybe more statistical side and cater to that audience within your main audience as well. So really looking for the small differences within your main audiences and creating content to them.
So when you're sharing the message that search is a behavior to your clients, how do they embrace it? Are they willing to understand that search happens in different places all the time and it's more difficult to measure than it used to be? Or are most clients kind of stuck in the world of, no, we need to focus on SEO, we need to focus on Google, we need to focus on keywords and measurable traffic? And if so, how do you push back against that?
I think there's been a shift over the past couple of years, whereas if you've asked me this 2 years ago, I would have said this is really difficult to tell them and they are naysayers, all of them. But it's like they have also adapted the way they interact with media and their search behavior so they can see themselves in what we're saying now. So when I'm with a client and I say we need to take into account ChatGPT, we need to take into account TikTok, we need to take into account XYZ, then they're more like, yes, we can see that. That makes sense. So it's not much of a pushback we're getting. It's more but how do we do it? The panic that spreads in them because it is so many platforms that they need to be available on in a sense. So it's more in that sense the conversation will then go with the clients.
Do they also ask you, how do we measure it?
Yes, of course. And that's where it gets, again, tricky because a platform like TikTok does not allow for measurement organically. So you need to find proxies for how you measure the performance. And that's when it comes back to what the business finds important when they want to measure stuff. Is it the reach or is it the likes? Is it the mentions? Is it the traffic coming onto site? Is it the bounce rates? We know from SEO in general, it's very different what parameters a business wants to look at. For some businesses, it is extremely important to have low bounce rates, Whereas for others, it's not something that they're focused on. It doesn't matter. That's a discussion you need to have with the client on what they find important in that weighing.
Mathilde, what is the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
My key takeaway is you need to have an integrated approach. You need to talk with the e-com department. You need to talk with the media department. You need to talk with the SoMe team to make sure that you have this organic optimization across all of media activities.
Mathilde Høj is an SEO team lead at Transact Denmark. Find out more over at omctransact.com. Mathilde, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at seoin2026.com.